Welcome back to the Milwaukee Market Update, where we break down what's actually happening in Milwaukee real estate market. And today's big question, why did we move to and decide to stay in Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
Yeah, Ty, we are mixing it up today. Instead of talking about the housing market and what's going on and is housing about to crash, we're talking about this beautiful city we live in and some of the places our clients are now calling home and why we decided to stay here.
Right? Let's be honest, there's a lot of stuff to do out there. Every single weekend, it's what should we do today? Where should we get dinner? And how are we going to do all of these festivals this weekend and fit in a round of golf? We're here to highlight all the great things that are right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Exactly. And whether you're thinking about moving here, relocating, moving to a different suburb, we're here to talk about some of the great features that Milwaukee has to offer and why we love calling this place home. If you're new to the show or you're returning because you got value from our previous episodes, please take a second, hit subscribe. It helps us reach more people that want to find out about the real estate market here and why we love Milwaukee. You can find us on Instagram at Horizon Homes MKE or at homewithhorizon.com.
All right, let's get into it.
All right, Ty, a bit different of an episode today. Normally we are filling people's minds with what's going on in the housing market, talking about the latest transactions, the buyers and sellers that we're helping out. But I think something that we don't really talk about enough is where these people are buying and selling, the city that we live in, this beautiful place in Wisconsin called Milwaukee that we get to enjoy every single day. And I know this is my idea here, but I think it'd be fun to just kind of talk more about the city because a lot of people know about Milwaukee, but some people have been here, most haven't. A lot of people are relocating here, and I think it'd be good I'm excited to talk to you about what Milwaukee has to offer, why we love it here, why we choose to stay here, and just help people understand this beautiful place in Milwaukee.
I'll try to sneak a couple stats in still, regardless, even in a non-stats episode. But I'm excited to talk about it. I think a little bit of background. I've been here for about 10 years now. I think you're just a couple years behind me in terms of how long we've lived here. We both came from like relatively smaller area of Des Moines, Iowa, that in itself is kind of up and coming. And I feel like Milwaukee itself it's historic, but also up and coming at the same time. And
Yeah.
I think there's some really cool differences if you compared it to a smaller city like Des Moines versus a bigger city like Chicago. I think it's going to be really exciting about the things that we love most about Milwaukee and why we've chosen to call it our home base.
Yeah, I agree. And when I moved here, I had never been here before. I've heard of Milwaukee. I think anyone in the U.S. has heard of this city at some point. And I kind of pictured it to be this Rust Belt, kind of Detroit-ish, run down, dilapidated, mean people. I just kind of had this picture in my head of what Milwaukee was. And I got here and it blew me away. And it's very much this small city that has everything you need, but is also big enough to have what you need, but small enough to be convenient. So let's kind of talk about the city here, man. Like, how would you explain Milwaukee to someone that's never been here? What would you explain what the city is like here?
Yeah, I feel like if I wanted to explain it, it's big enough to where it has stuff to do for pretty much everyone, but it's not too big to where you feel like you're on top of other people. Generally, people are nice. If you want to drive 30 minutes outside of the city, all of a sudden you're like in almost every other suburb type fringe area of other cities as well. So it's got something for everybody in the area, and I think that's why I like it. Is you can get your different flavors no matter where you choose to actually have your home, whether you're renting or you're owning. You can get to anything that you want to do in relatively 15 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a beautiful city. It's right on Lake Michigan, which I didn't understand when I moved here. It is literally on the ocean. Every morning, if you want to go and see an ocean, you can. Sure, it's a lake. You can't see across it.
It's
So might
not
as well be
literally
an
an
ocean.
ocean; it's practically an ocean.
It is practically an ocean, yeah. There's beaches here. It is this large downtown metro that is right on the lake. And then, yeah, you nailed it. As you kind of move out from the city, you get more of that suburb, more of that bigger lot line, more suburban kind of feel. But then in the city, you have a lot of older buildings, a lot of historic nature to it. Milwaukee is known for being, at one point, the largest brewery epicenter of the world. I think you name any beer company, and at one point they were headquartered here or the beer was brewed here. So you have a lot of the beer heritage as part of Milwaukee's culture. The Milwaukee Brewers are the brewers. And then you also have a lot of like the German influence, the cheese influence, the cheeseheads of the Packers, a lot of brats. So you have a lot of like rich culture from Milwaukee just from when it was established and built. I think it's one of the most convenient cities that you could be in. It has everything you need, and you can live in an area where you can pretty much walk anywhere you want to go. But we don't really have traffic. We don't really have this rush hour feeling. You can drive just about anywhere that you need to go in probably under 20 minutes, and like even less if you have no reason to go across the city or across town. It's very convenient and nice. And I think when I go and visit friends that are in big cities like Chicago or Los Angeles or Denver, and we go out to golf for a day and the course is 5 miles away and we're in the car for an hour and a half, I lose my mind. I'm like, we're in gridlock right now and not going anywhere. And I think it's very underrated for those reasons. A lot of clients that come and visit, they typically stay in kind of the third ward or the downtown area. And the third ward is kind of that trendier, high-rise condos, bougie restaurants, place to see and be seen. And one thing that they always tell me too is that it's really clean here, which I guess I never really appreciated. But our downtown, I would say, is there's not trash. It doesn't smell. People are nice. I think that's like a very underrated thing that we don't talk about much either. What would you say are maybe some of like the maybe top 2 or 3 things that you appreciate about the city?
Yeah, a couple things already mentioned. Being on the lake is just excellent. And again, that's Lake Michigan because of the beaches. I'm very fortunate. I live just north of downtown. So one of my, most of my daily commutes involve me going down Lincoln Memorial to get, down to the Summerfest grounds. And you're driving on, like you said, it's essentially a lake, just beautiful views. It's big, but not too big. And I think that's really great for people who want to come visit you. I feel like most of the time my friends and family want to come up here versus the other way around, because for the people that live in smaller areas, it's like there's a million things to do. And it's like they're in an amusement park of all the different food options, entertainment options, festival scene that we have here, especially in the peak season and, spring all the way through fall. But then for the people coming from bigger areas, they say things like you. It's like, oh my gosh, it's so easy to get around here. We fit so much stuff in. It's nice. The people are nice. Like, it's just the perfect little sweet spot or like Goldilocks zone of just like people coming to visit. And we get to live that every day when we live here. And I love the food scene. I mean, I would say like the comparison versus like a Chicago or an LA is there's not like 10 amazing options of everything, but there's like 1 or 2, and they don't get old. It's not a bunch of like big box Applebee's and, they exist. But all of these different areas that people love have like their own little niche. They have their local shop that's been there for several years. If new things pop up, they have to be really excellent to survive. So I think the food scene, after all the time that I've spent traveling, and it's hard to beat it. If it's 90 to 95% as good as some of the places we go into in Chicago and Las Vegas and everything else.
I think our food scene here is incredible. I think Milwaukee does a great job with restaurants, and you kind of nailed it. Like, if it's a restaurant that comes in that isn't good, people, they're not picky, but it doesn't make it because it doesn't have the quality and the standards of what else is out there. Ashley and I go out to eat probably once a week, twice a week, just doing date nights, exploring. We've got like our local spots. We love going to new places, and there are so many options of food places. And I love how Milwaukee has all these different sub pockets, if you will, in different neighborhoods and different areas. And you could spend a month just going to one sub pocket and going out to eat almost every day and trying to find a new place to eat and not get sick of it either, which is fun too, that you have all these different areas to explore that all have kind of a different feel to it, but also have that historic charm. That's one thing I think too, like a lot of newer cities, like I think about Charlotte. I got a buddy that lives out there, and it's nice because everything is like brand freaking new, but it all kind of has that new construction feel. When they build those new apartments, they all kind of look like that, and the whole city looks like that. And you kind of look and you go like, it doesn't have like the
charm,
like a true authenticity to it almost.
Yeah.
It's all new construction. Yeah, like the big box, like Buffalo Wild Wings and like chain stores. I'm like, this doesn't have the same allure, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that was one of the other things I love that sometimes we take for granted, but when people visit, I had some people in town recently, and one of the activities was just walking, around the neighborhood because we've got 100-year-old homes. We're near the lake. That's like an activity that you can do versus you visit some of these places like maybe Charlotte. It's like walking around would be like, okay, there's 10 other new construction commercial buildings that have a rental above it, rental apartments above it and something down below. Yeah, it's cool and they're probably nice options, but like honestly, most of the time they're like big and grand and like the restaurants and all the things are trying to be massive, like these huge venues that either like succeed or flop. Versus here in Milwaukee, you got all these little tiny joints that have their own little vibe, little flavor, and you can bounce around to all of them and they don't necessarily need to like crush it to survive in terms of like, yeah, there's Cloud Red here in Shorewood is like, yeah, you're like clamoring over the, 20 tables that are in their restaurant, but there's 50 people who want one.
Yeah, yeah, and it's sold out every time. And good luck getting your reservation unless it's a month out.
Yeah. And there are no reservations.
Tell me about supper clubs, man. What's the deal with supper clubs here in Wisconsin?
Supper clubs, I feel like it's almost like the kind of like thing you do a couple times, unless you're like doing an occasion with like a older family. But supper clubs, it's like you're walking into your grandma and grandpa's living room that got converted into the dining room at Thanksgiving, and they serve steak and family style sides. But the really important note is you walk in and there's a bar, and you always get at least one or two cocktails while you wait for your table to be prepped. And then you're having just a great family style meal, and usually some of the best steaks that you're ever going to have versus like a steakhouse where it's going to be more upscale and it's about the experience. This is more of just like it's more about who you're with than what you're doing. It's just like a classic vibe.
I remember when I first moved here and someone was telling me, oh, it's a supper club. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, oh, a supper club. And I'm like, okay, you've said that word twice and haven't really explained what it is. That's kind of when I realized like that's very much a part of the Wisconsin culture if you're from here. I think it's kind of like a Kleenex ubiquitous term of like any restaurant is like, oh, it's a supper club. It's just like a term for a restaurant. But we went to 5 o'clock steakhouse. This was 2 years ago. Ashley and I did. It was my first like real time with a supper club. There's no windows. You kind of nailed it. You feel like you're in like an old timey like mafia movie almost. It's like very like comfortable white tablecloth. Everyone's like dressed up nice. And I don't know if this is like for all supper clubs, but 5 o'clock steakhouse has been around since probably like the 50s or 60s. One of like the oldest ones in the city here. You go to the bar, you order your cocktails, then you also order your food at the bar too. So you like tell the bartender what you're going to have. You order your steaks, your sides. They bring you over. They have you sit down at the table. You bring your cocktails over. There's food waiting for you. And then they just start bringing food out your way. And it almost feels like the way that we should be ordering, really. Because you're just like sitting there, you're hanging out, food's coming out. You're not like having to break the conversation to talk to the waitress or waiter.
It's not stiff. You're mingling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Talk about the sports scene here.
Yeah, I think this kind of fits into it's big, but it's not too big. Is we're big enough to be able to support the Brewers, which is a Major League Baseball team, as well as big enough to support the Milwaukee Bucks, which the Brewers are just a little bit outside of downtown. People love it. There's an entire bar scene that's specifically focused on essentially servicing multiple games per week and shuttling people to the games. The Bucks have a brand new shiny arena and a whole district that's dedicated to essentially serving that kind of fall and winter season when the basketball season's going on. That ends up being like a focal point where not only do people go there for the baseball games, but they're going there to tailgate and to enjoy the nice weather because sometimes it's a shorter season here in terms of nice weather. And the Bucks, Deer District is home to a lot of other events. You got graduations, you've got other events going on. There's some Christmas events going on. I think all of that stuff is great because it's big enough to support it. But if you're not like the sports enthusiast or fanatic, you just go down a few streets away and you've got great theater. You've got a great art scene. There's like a little bit of something for everyone that feels like you're in that big city, but it's all kind of like centralized into one spot, versus, again, our experience is Des Moines, Iowa. It's like, yeah, there might be a couple of those things, but it's like, you're going to a Energy or a Wild game or whatever the heck the sports teams are that they have there that are like G League.
Yeah.
And it's like great. It's kind of something you do. It's more of like a show and a spectacle versus like high level sports performance. And it's kind of the same thing the art scene with the ballet and the theater. There's actually good options that you get and top of the line shows.
Yeah, I think the sports scene here in Milwaukee is pretty good. And I would say you have a lot of loyal fans. I feel like we're a baseball city first. And I don't watch a lot of baseball, but online or like just watching like another MLB game, you see these stadiums that are almost empty. And then any Brewers game I ever been to, it's almost like a sold out game every single time. The tailgate scene is great. They have shuttles for just about any bar that you go to where you order one drink, you get a free shuttle to the game and back, which is unheard of. It's like a $4 shuttle because for also beer here or food is so dang cheap. That's one thing my buddies say when they come to visit is I just got a round of drinks for everyone and it was $17. In Chicago, this would have been $60.
Yeah.
It's like one of those like things that we take for granted being here. The Bucks are great. Yeah, I think Milwaukee's probably a baseball team first, and then you got the Packers also, hour and a half north in Green Bay, and I feel like Wisconsin goes to war for that team, and if the Packers win on Sunday, everyone's in a good mood for that week. If they lose on Sunday, good luck talking to anyone that week. So you do have a lot of culture that way, and a lot of people that really care about their teams doing well. And it's fun. It's fun being in a city where, and the teams are generally good too. Like Brewers make playoff runs almost every year. The Packers are, they still make the playoffs. When the Bucks won the finals, the city was like nothing I've ever seen before. And it's cool to see that happen here with the city.
Yeah. And kind of on this, it's just big enough kind of theme is you can make your own fun. Even when it's like the dead of winter, there's still Bucks games going on. And obviously like tail end of the football season, like people make excuses to get together and entertain themselves. Or if you're an outdoorsman, there's a ton of stuff just 30 minutes outside of the city to hike and enjoy the weather and get out in nature and ice fish and all these different things. Like that's what's really great. But then as soon as you get to that May to September timeframe, the festival season, it's just an explosion of things to do. Like you have to try not to like fill your entire weekend with multiple activities and stuff to do versus I feel like in other smaller areas, it's like we've got that one summer festival each year and everyone's so excited about the long weekend of Thursday through Sunday. And they've got a little circus kind of going on. That's like every weekend here in Milwaukee where you're almost like at the point where it's like, I don't even know if we can get to everything that we want to do because it's so much fun. And that's just in like the Milwaukee area. You even just go a little bit outside the perimeter, like, Cedarburg, which is about 30, 40 minutes north of downtown. They've got excellent festivals and they've got that hometown Main Street feel right on a river and their own breweries and their own restaurant scene. Again, you can't, essentially find yourself with a weekend where you don't have something you want to do.
Yeah. Well said, man. So let's say you have your family coming to visit, friends coming to visit. What's kind of like, it's summertime here, nice weather. What are maybe like 2 or 3 things that you're like, we got to do this today, or we got to do this weekend?
Yeah, I feel like the first thing is like if they're getting on a Friday, you're probably going to plan a dinner. And we've already talked about the restaurant scene, and that's where you just kind of have to pull the room. But whatever gets decided on, whether it's Mexican food, Asian food, a dinner, supper club, or like a steak dinner, like you've got that. You got Harbor House that's actually on the lake. It's like one of the only restaurants that has the view of downtown on Lake Michigan. You're lining up a great dinner. Next morning, you're lining up a brunch. And I've been to other similar sized cities, and I would say in the peak season where you want to be visiting Milwaukee from May through September, the brunch scene is popping. You do have to try to get a reservation, or you're planning to arrive there, put your name in, and you're going to go walk around wherever area you're in while you're going to wait to get served. And then you're going to be deciding between like, do we want to go to a Polish fest or a German fest or, Summerfest music festival? Like, what are we doing for like that major activity on Saturday? And again, Sunday, you can line up another brunch, or you can do like a round of golf, which I know you're going to want to talk about. It's the options are endless where you just can't actually fit everything in a weekend, but you want to have that mix of like walking and outdoor kind of play with the food scene. And usually there's like one major, kind of principal event going on that weekend too, that everyone's like attracted to. And maybe what was the original reason for their visit in the first place.
Yeah. I think one thing that I love to do with my family, there's a river that runs right through downtown. You got the lake. So you got all this water kind of everywhere you look, there's water near you. And we love renting kayaks and then kayaking up and down the Milwaukee River. And there's all these bars that are right on the river. You kayak up to it, park your kayak, you get out, grab a couple cheese curds and hang out for a while. And that I think is one of the best activities that you can do on a nice summer day. You mentioned golf. Milwaukee, I think, has one of the best park systems of any city I've been to. Not even just golf courses, but let alone just green spaces that they have dedicated for a park or a walking trail. There's endless miles of bike trails. The Oak Leaf Trail is kind of the main one that goes all the way up and down the lake, all the way down into the city near Tosa and even further. And there's tons of bike paths and walking paths, but then just all this green space that they have dedicated for just parks. And I think the golf scene here, obviously I'm a huge golfer. There are so many options that you have, no matter where you live in the city, to golf at a decent course and have a lot of choices within 40 minutes of where you are, to the point where it's almost overwhelming trying to decide which course to play at. Milwaukee County puts together, they have their own golf courses that are probably some of the best city-owned or county-ran courses I've ever been to. You have tons of private courses. You've got different clubs. And I think the golf scene here is incredible. Then you also have Whistling Straits about an hour and a half north in Sheboygan, where they've done the Ryder Cup a couple years ago. So you also have one of the, I think there's 2 or 3 top-ranked public courses in the U.S. that are in Wisconsin. Got to have the budget to spend it and be willing to kind of pay for it. But that, I think, is one of the best things about Milwaukee too.
Just and on your the parks is something that they've really focused on, and there's these we call them like river parkways, and it's kind of almost like a square that surrounds Milwaukee and its suburbs, and each one of these has its like own little, like more just like your traditional park, what you think of, a playground and cooking spaces, pavilions, things that you can rent, but then usually right off the side of that is going to be those golf courses. But what everyone loves here is the beer gardens. And that's like a huge part of the German culture here is on the weekends, that's what they did for their entertainment is they got done with their work. And then they leisurely went to the park systems that are excellent. And they got themselves a huge stein and enjoyed the parks and the rivers and the lakes. So pretty much everywhere you go, every city, every neighborhood, usually in one of those parks, you're going to have a beer garden.
Yeah. Yep. I got some rapid fire questions to ask you here to kind of wrap up, unless you got something else you want to chat on here.
I feel like the last activity before you get to your rapid fire is honestly for people that are new to Milwaukee. I almost feel like the drive around the different areas to even just like kind of show them the expanse, because you can spend an entire weekend just downtown in the Third Ward. You can spend an entire weekend on the east side in Shorewood. Like you could go down to Bayview for a whole weekend, and some of those areas you could go out to Tosa and then Lake Country out to Milwaukee. So like those are some of our pockets where people choose to live because they get more familiar with these pockets of North Shore, the south side, like Bayview and those neighborhoods, Tosa, Brookfield. And then we have like 2 different like kind of lake country areas of like the Pewaukee area, as well as like Mugwanago, Muskego, where there's like this lake country and it's more your outskirts, like, your outdoorsman versus being kind of like stuffy in the city. Sometimes it's just fun to bump people around these neighborhoods. And each time they come to Milwaukee, you can give them a whole different flavor where they didn't even realize that was on the menu. So, one, that's a little bit of an overview of some of the places you could actually live here in the area, but it's actually just fun to like do those drives. Like again, driving up and down Lake Drive, through the North Shore, driving around Pewaukee and checking out the lake houses, renting a pontoon boat and gawking at all these awesome multi-million-dollar lake houses. You've got all these different flavors and activities where it's literally just being outside and enjoying the architecture, in some cases the history of what's going on here in Milwaukee, because it's super old and it's not just the cookie cutter houses and buildings that you get in most other, I'd say like suburbs and cities.
Yeah. Well said, man.
Hit us with it. Rapid fire.
All right. I got a couple questions for you. I got these pulled up here. I'll choose maybe like 3 or 4, depending on how we're doing here. Best neighborhood feel or best neighborhood vibe. Could be a suburb, could be a specific area, but what would you say is the best neighborhood here, the best like place to call home or walk around and bum around in?
Well, obviously I'm going to say Shorewood. So Shorewood, Whitefish Bay, I feel like almost has like that really cool mix where you don't even feel like you're in Milwaukee or the Midwest. It's like almost more East Coast-ish, where it's very dense in terms of the housing. And that actually creates 2 to 3 streets, essentially in each one of the, Whitefish Bay versus Shorewood, where there's a ton of stuff to walk to bike to, a lot of parks that are right there on Lake Michigan to go like picnic. And I just love that I can literally all on one street. I can go to my bank. I can go to a cafe, to the laundry cleaner, to my barber. like everything I could in theory bike to in probably about 5 to 10 minutes, and I could do all my errands. There's something cool about, having grown up in a suburb where you had to drive everywhere, but like flipping it back to like the good old days where we've got everything we need within essentially like 1 to 2 square miles. That's one of my favorite like neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I think
How about you?
you're underselling Shorewood and Whitefish Bay a bit too, because I think it's also probably the most picturesque neighborhood in the Milwaukee area. Every home is cute, it's historic, it's charming. White picket fence. We went to the Whitefish Bay 4th of July parade last year, and you think about like a movie that wants to depict what it is like growing up in the U.S., and that day was literally it, where you have kids running around with sparklers and water balloons and parents just like, yep, come back at 10 p.m. We'll see you later. And I think that's one of the most quintessential neighborhoods in Milwaukee area here. Kind of going off of that, I think Tosa has a great feel. Wauwatosa. If you're near like the East Tosa or a little bit further west, you've got kind of the same kind of feel, maybe a little bit more space, but it's more of like a younger crowd, I would say. Shorewood and Whitefish Bay are a bit more established, sophisticated, maybe a little bit more family oriented.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's why you're there. Tosa, I feel like, is the successful crowd that also wants to still have fun and shows that we're still cool. Because you have a great bar scene, a great like restaurant scene out there, but also you do get that still quintessential kind of feel of the neighborhood too.
They want the yard and the dog, but they want the downtown kind of feel still, where they're going to go to their little local corner bar, but also some nice restaurants, but they've got some more park and green space and their picket fence. Yeah, yep. Definitely. It's the upgrade from downtown living. Yeah.
What would you say is the most underrated suburb?
Ooh, most underrated. I'm going to have to, I feel like they're all, none are underrated. Like everyone's like, yeah, that's a great spot. It's
I'll say what mine is. I think West Dallas is still underrated. We talk a lot about West Dallas in our podcast here, but if you're from Milwaukee, it didn't have the best reputation 10, 15, 20 years ago. And it's really changed in a ton of positive ways. I think it's still very underrated. I think you have tons of restaurants, tons of bars, tons of amenities and things to do. But it's still affordable on the grand scheme of things. And I think they're still kind of fighting that stereotype that they used to have 20 years ago. And it's not that case anymore. And I think it's extremely underrated from a suburb perspective.
Yeah, I almost want to toss it again. Bayview is like the one that comes to mind, where it gets overlooked a lot because it's, Milwaukee Public Schools. But if you're like looking at one spot that has more like bars and restaurants that people seek out, that isn't just your classic Italian joint or steakhouse, Bayview has like one street that's just littered with shopping and everything else. Again, really close to South Shore Park, and they have a beer garden and just a lot of stuff going on there. I think very underrated from that perspective. And also lots of cute houses, maybe not as much of like the big Tudors and those kind of things, but like there's still some impressive spots there in Bayview. That's kind of like a layup pick though. Not a hot take. Not a hot take.
I'm putting you on the spot here. All right, we got one. I'll do two more. We'll finish with one good one, kind of a silly one here. Best day trip. You're packing the car, you're going to go somewhere. Maybe you're staying for one night, or maybe you're coming back that day. But what's the best place to go for the day?
Gosh, for like a close option, I feel like I'm between Cedarburg and Pewaukee Lake. Those, I would say Cedarburg specifically, if you're kind of like wanting to like, again, bump around a Main Street vibe and check out some restaurants, but they've also got like some biking. It's on the river. There's a lot of cool stuff to do in Cedarburg. If you're looking like longer distance, like you're going to be like leaving early, spending the day, staying the night, staying part of the day, driving home, you got to get up to Door County, which is obviously not a portion of Milwaukee. But that's one of those places that, like, again, it feels like you're in one of like the most luxurious, like more fun places to visit in like a Florida. If you're there during the May through September timeframe, just all these beach towns, tons of stuff to do. Kind of like you just said, like the perennial, you're trying to emulate what Memorial Day weekend or 4th of July weekend looks like. That's like every weekend up there in Door County. And it's like busy getting up there, but once you're there, it's like it's not too big to a point where it's like, yeah, things are gonna be busy, but you kind of want that vibe. So if you're going a little bit further, like 3+ hours, that's worth it for like a day plus an overnight trip.
You stole mine, so I got to scramble here.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think a good day trip. No, it's all good. Madison, I think is a good day trip. You're an hour and a
Definitely.
half away, straight west. Beautiful city. It's the largest isthmus in the U.S., which I learned when I had some friends that went to grad school there. But very, very nice city. Lots to do. Good restaurant scene. You got University of Wisconsin Madison out there for a Badgers game. Probably the best day trip, I would say. And then if you're looking for something further, Mackinac Island. This is a bit of a hike. It's way, way up at the very top of the UP. It's right on the border of Michigan and Wisconsin. But it's an island that's only accessible by ferry. There are no cars allowed on the island, so it's only bikes and horse and buggy. It feels like you're in a Disney World that's on an island. My buddy got married up there, and that was Delaware County on steroids in a way, in the sense of like trying to preserve the historic nature. It's a hike to get to, but worth going up to for a weekend.
Awesome.
All right, and then give me a Milwaukee stereotype that is true, or a Milwaukee stereotype that's false.
Man, Milwaukee stereotype that everyone knows everybody. Like, small walkie is like a thing here. I mean, I've been here for 10 years. I don't feel like I know everybody, but certainly if you like grew up here, there's like a lot of people grow up in one spot and they feel like they stay in that spot forever. So it's like it feels smaller than it is, because we're talking about a greater Milwaukee area that's larger than like 1 million people. You don't know everybody. You just happen to still go to the same spots that you kind of grew up going to. So you're seeing the same people who also are still going to the same spots they grew up going to. So small Milwaukee is probably like the stereotype, which a lot of that is people maybe venture out, spread their wings, but a lot of people end up coming back here to Milwaukee. And I don't think that's like I don't think that's a negative thing.
No.
I think that's a positive of how awesome it is to live here. The quality of life, the affordability of it, the just vast options depending on what you like. I think that's why people just end up coming back to what they know, because it's just how great it is.
Yeah. I would say it's something that's true. Wisconsin's unfortunately known for our accents, and not as much in the city, but someone that's from Wisconsin or someone that's from up north, there's definitely the accent that comes out without a doubt. And then we're not all alcoholics, is what I would say. That's
Okay,
false.
yeah.
There's this reputation and stereotype that everyone in Wisconsin likes beer and drinks and eats cheese, and that's not all of us. And so I'm going to say it's completely false, but it's more false than not.
Yeah, I would say more false than not, but I would say I grew up in Iowa thinking you went to the movie theater to like have fun and just watch the movies with popcorn. Beer or drinks are involved in every activity in Wisconsin. So if you want to dabble, you can dabble, but there's always fun stuff going on to where you don't need to, dabble and, boozing up a little bit.
Yep. All right. Well, good stuff, man. Well, I think that's Milwaukee for you guys. As always, Ty, appreciate doing this with you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you back here again in a couple weeks.
Bye, guys.